Welcome back to Ready, Set, College. I'm your host, Rob Schwartz. We are back tackling myths of college admission. We're going to move on to our second one in the list, which is, it is hard to get into a good college. Guys, this is a definition problem. What's a good college? Well, that depends on your definition. I come across families where there's four of them, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford. That is not a logical or sane view of the college universe. Knowing there's 2,300 schools in the United States, I would wager at least, without exaggeration, 30% of them are what I would consider good schools, where you can get world-class education, meet outstanding PhD, MD professors who have a very clear understanding of what they're doing and why they're doing it, who do world-class research, who push the educational envelope forward every single day. So be very careful about making judgments on colleges, especially when it comes to the name brand variety. If you don't know the name, it does not mean it's not a good college. There is a huge list out there. Many schools. And I'll tell you what, I will put a number of them up on the board here for you, just so you can get an idea of all over the country. There are these amazing opportunities for success. Let's say you wanted, for instance, you want to be a researcher. You want to put on that lab coat and you want to dig deeper. You want to do, research into a topic where you're going to be traveling all over the country or all over the world. There are schools you have never heard of that will give your students, or you if you are a student, world-class opportunities to do independent or codependent research as a freshman or a sophomore. Those things rarely happen at some of the bigger name schools, because there's a large number of graduate students who are fighting for those spots. And the majority of the time, the professors are paid not to teach you, they're paid to fund that research. They're out there digging their own stuff up. So realize that it's not always what it seems. And just because you didn't go to the school that admitted 12% of the students they decided to take last year does not mean you were somehow a failure. You need to think a little bit more clearly about this topic. I encourage you to get in touch with me if you have questions or concerns as it pertains to building a good college list with good schools. Let's tackle number 3. Most colleges think highly of the SAT and not as much about the ACT, right? Again, another statement that maybe 15 or 20 years ago might have some validity, but in the modern era, just not true. The SAT and the ACT are taken by millions and millions of students every single year, both in this country and overseas. They are both very different exams run by two totally different companies. The SAT, run by the College Board, and ACT under its own flag of ACT, are in two different parts of the country. They represent two different brands. They represent two different ways of analyzing student ability. In its current version, the SAT is a reasoning test. It says so in the name of the exam, the SAT 1 reasoning test. It's far more about how well you take exams than it is about the curricular knowledge that you possess. The ACT, far more about curricular knowledge. You're a strong student, you're taking good classes, getting good grades, you'll probably gravitate towards that test naturally, because it is digging for more of that curricular knowledge that you're getting in school. The SAT will punish you in its current version by 1/4 of a point every time you're wrong. The ACT, no such thing. So the way you approach answering questions is fundamentally different. On the SAT, you need to think about, do I or do I not guess, and why? On the ACT, if you don't know the right answer, pick your favorite letter and move on. Don't ever leave a blank. But let's get down to the myth. Are there colleges who simply will take one but not the other? At my last count, I believe there are 4 in the United States, and they are not prominent named schools. In the state of California, 100% of the colleges and universities that you want to get into, the Stanfords, the SCs, the UCLAs, the Caltechs, are going to accept the SAT or the ACT equally. There's only one school in the state that has a prescribed favorite, if you will. Cal Poly San Luis Obispo actually prefers the ACT, but they are more than happy to accept an SAT score. Why? Here's why. They don't want to throw away perfectly good candidates simply because they weren't aware of one test or the other. Here in California, we have something called the CASE, the California High School Exit Exam. In the majority of the states in the Midwest, their CASE is the ACT. So their exposure is very different than what we have here in California. We've been trained to think the SAT is what you take. That's just not the way it is anymore, guys. Be a better consumer. Take a full free-length practice SAT and a full free-length ACT practice test. Find out your strengths and weaknesses and move on from there. It is not as complicated or scary as you would think, and realize that colleges will always give you the benefit of the doubt and take at a minimum the highest score you give them. Come back in a few seconds. We have many more myths to bust in today's show on Ready, Set, College. We'll see you in a minute.